I actually was really inspired by a Timothée Chalamet profile in GQ. The main takeaway I got from that as a young food writer was quality over quantity. I think that's always been my mantra with my work, even with just like an internet presence, kind of like less is more maybe.
You're listening to the Taste Podcast. I'm Editor-in-Chief Matt Rodbard, here with Senior Editor Anna Hezel.
Today on the show, Matt is talking with New York Times cooking columnist Eric Kim. Also, Matt and I discuss what we've been up to for the past 2 years since we last dropped a Taste podcast episode.
We're back, Anna. We're back.
We're back. But first of all, how was hanging out with Eric?
Oh, yeah, Eric Kim. I love this guy. He's such a unique voice. He's got this unique style of food writing, which has appeared frequently in the New York Times, Food 52, and many other publications. Eric mixes a truly lyrical style of prose with deep reporting chops and this knack for writing recipes in the most simplest form, 1 or 2 ingredients. We all know that's extremely difficult, and Eric excels at it.
He also wrote an awesome story for Taste earlier this year about the concept of the second fridge and just the ways that people creatively use their second refrigerators in their basements, garages.
I love the idea of the second and third fridge. Us New Yorkers typically don't have those, but he really captured it in this Taste article, which we'll link to in the show notes. So in this conversation, we talk about some of these Times recipes, these big hits, and also his forthcoming cookbook that I am personally really excited about. It's called Korean American. It's dropping in the spring. And we also talk about the way this book blends memoir and crack recipe development, and it's just such a cool book.
Here's Matt talking with Eric. And make sure to visit tastecooking.com for our latest stories and recipes, and to sign up for our newsletters, which drop on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Eric Kim, welcome to the Taste Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm sucking on a cough drop, if that's okay.
You sound great to me. And we are recording this in September. And yesterday, you dropped your cover on Instagram. Like, you revealed your cover. Your book is out next year in March. But I wanted to get you in because it's just like Eric Kim. We got to talk to Eric Kim. Love you. You're great. Well, how did that go?
It's been a crazy week. I was so excited, so nervous. The feedback has been incredible, and I think it was also just a reminder of kind of readers I have. They're very engaged, and so I don't think that I have that many followers, but the ones I do have are very dedicated, and they always like send me Timothée Chalamet photos, and everyone's like always sharing things, and so I feel very loved.
Why is that? I mean, I have my theories, and I'll talk about it in the intro to this podcast. But I think you do have fans, and you connect in a way that's very special. I think food writers often don't have that deep connection to their readers. They create great recipes, and we love the food, but when it comes to the person, maybe not. But you, what is it about you?
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, sure.
I wonder if it has to do with just the fact that I'm on social media a lot. Pretty obsessed with my phone. I need to turn it off, which I did last night after I posted it because of the anxiety. But I think one thing I actually was really inspired by a Timothée Chalamet profile in GQ. In all seriousness,
it's your boy.
It's my boy. It was a really good profile, and it just kind of talks about how he went into the woods and was really like rethinking his career. And I think the main takeaway I got from that as a young food writer was quality over quantity. And that's something that my boss, Genevieve Ko, also always encourages at the Times. And so I think I think that's always been my mantra with my work, and even with just like an internet presence, kind of like less is more maybe.
Absolutely. And you right now, we'll pivot to the Times before we get to Korean American, because you are a staff writer, cooking writer on the Times. I want to hear about what the process is like at the Times, and really yourself as a developer. What do you try to do with your recipes? You aren't only cooking Korean food, which is the point of hiring you because you develop amazing recipes. So what do you think about when you're developing these recipes?
Yeah, I think this job was timed so aptly, like right after I finished developing the book, basically. And so I had all these impulses that I learned from my mom, and I think one thing that we always had as a barometer for the recipes in the cookbook was 감춘맛, and in Korean that like refers to like a taste that grabs you. So if we take a bite of something it doesn't grab you, then it's like not worthy of, existing or whatever. Because I think my constant worry is just iterating without any variance and like copying or just not being original. So that's my greatest fear, I think. So when I am developing a recipe, I always want to make sure there's like a teaching moment, kind of like something new that I feel that I, am offering to a certain recipe.
It's great that you say that, because you do teach, you advise on technique, but you also are really apt to take these uber simple concepts, oftentimes two ingredients like rice plus egg, espresso plus ice cream. So what kind of draws you to the uber simplicity, which many know is a great challenge when writing recipes too?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I would actually say that with my recipes, Genevieve helps me pull back, and she helps me like knock out certain ingredients that I don't need. And my impulse is often to just really fortify with fish sauce and sugar and salt. But that's sort of my those are my go-tos. But with those specific recipes, those were actually columns for the New York Times Magazine. And so I think with that column, I sort of approached it with this in mind, like what can I write laps around? And I've always loved writing about truisms in culinary life. And so for me, that meant just talking about sweet and sour sauce at McDonald's for 800 words. The egg rice was something that I noticed on social media was just very resonant across cultures, so I really wanted to tell that story. And affogato was an assignment, actually, or it was like a suggestion from Genevieve. And I love assignments. Just as like a writer, it's nice to be handed something. It's like, are you passionate about this at all? And then
for affogato, I'm remembering this. I didn't read the column recently, but was there something to do with like a drive and throwing soft serve into a cup of coffee?
Yeah.
I think that's what you were writing about.
So yeah, I was literally on the road. I was driving down to Georgia, and actually, I want to tell the story because it's funny now. But Emily Weinstein, I took off for my birthday. It was like 2 days, and Emily Weinstein emailed me on the Monday that I was off, and she didn't know that I was off. She was like, "Are you still filing your column today?" I was like, "Oh my god." And I was like on I-75 driving, and I hope Emily doesn't listen to this. But
New York Times editor Emily Weinstein, long time.
I think she'll appreciate the story. But
friend of taste.
so I think what ended up happening though was like it was a very organic column because I was literally on the road. I was literally like getting coffee and ice cream, and so it kind of worked out perfectly. And I feel like I've written some of my best stuff in motel rooms, like on road trips. So.
Like your extreme candor is appreciated. All food writers or writers in general experience a lapse of deadline or just an intentional.
Definitely.
But it was a great column. I respect it. Do you have a most popular recipe?
Yeah. I actually thought about this recently because with each new recipe that comes out, I kind of like forget about the past ones because I'm tracking like how the new one is doing, but. I think this is evidenced by all the shares I still get every day for the sheet pan bibimbap. That one's definitely the most popular, I would say. But the creamy asparagus pasta is also popular with the kim, the roasted seaweed. And then the salmon is trending now. So the gochugaru salmon is something I see a lot. And what I love about those three recipes is that each one kind of highlights a Korean pantry ingredient. And I just love that these recipes have, first of all, become popular at all, and then the fact that they're making people go out and buy these ingredients and sort of many of them learning about them for the first time and then incorporating them into their own repertoires. So like gochujang, gochugaru, and then kim.
Having kim in there and calling it kim and not seaweed or by the Japanese name nori is cool, and we can talk about your Korean writing. It's really important to use the right language and
for sure,
correct language. I appreciate that. Do you read your comments?
I really do. I'm someone who obsesses about everything and I track everything, and so I was always like a managing editor. So I like to track feedback, and I take it to heart, and I like learning from the comments. But what's really nice is when you kind of just, when you write about your life and you write about food and something kind of happy, people often write really sweet things. So the feedback, the comments are often very, very kind, actually. So
you dive into the New York Times cooking app and you look at those comments, and it's true. You're right. It is a positive experience. Yeah. It gives me a lot of hope as a recipe writer and developer myself that people are not just trying to snark and nag on your ideas.
Yeah.
I love that.
And if they do have issue with something, it's usually because they haven't made it yet, but it's often very like valid, and it's sort of they're adding to the conversation. They're like, why wouldn't you just do this? And then, but I don't always have time to go in and be like, because we thought about this and all that stuff. But yeah, they're very engaged. The NYT Cooking comment section is kind of why you get that subscription, I would say.
Right on. I love that. Yeah, the swaps are really good in there too, and there's a lot of just extra info. Let's talk about your writing about Korean American. I feel this is like a really advanced conversation. We'll probably work on something on taste closer to publication. I loved editing you that, I think, one time.
Yeah, that was like the last time, and I got the job like right after.
I know.
So that was so fun. I wrote a story for Taste about second fridges, and it was that was really fun to work on. I'd like always wanted to write for Taste. So
Thank you for doing that.
I was so glad I got to do it like right before I joined.
It's a great piece, and I would definitely appreciate your working around like lots of deadlines with that. And so maybe we'll work on something. But I want to hear about Korean American because I think having written with Dookie Hong a book about Korean food about 5 years ago, came out in 2016. There's been a lot of books about Korean food that have been published since then, and there's like a lot of interest in Korean food, and it's been a great trajectory. And you can listen back to the Dookie Hong interview I did with him a couple of years ago. But Eric, tell me, with Korean American, what was your goal in kind of differentiating it from the rest of the Korean cookbook world, and really did you accomplish that with the book?
I feel like time will tell. I'm still in the last edit, but I first want to say that Koreatown really influenced the book. My book. I reference it like a couple times. There's so many. It's so hard writing about a culture that maybe hasn't written about as much as other cuisines. So you go to the texts that exist, and especially when it comes to like American texts, it's always helpful to see how other people do it. And Sohee Kim's Korean Home Cooking, excellent book as well.
Excellent book,
absolutely. It
absolutely.
really helped me, obviously, like anything Mungchi. So yeah, I had a lot of like influences to like kind of lead me to the right direction, and a lot of anxiety going into it, because I was like, who am I to, be an expert on Korean food or to talk about it? But I think once I ignored that and kind of stopped worrying about that and realized that I'm a reporter, and I kind of approached the book in that way. So I feel like I didn't get to do as much reporting as I wanted to. It was going to have more of like the Koreatown vibe, actually. But it was during like the pandemic, and everything changed. So it really became like a home cooking book, and I was sort of reporting on my family. And there are like certain interviews with like people, like characters in the neighborhood and stuff. I think what makes it different is that it's my story, and it's my family's story, and I think that's the main thesis of the book, which is that this is not, supposed to be the definitive guide to Korean American food or cooking. It's one story, and I think it's really important that I always say this, that the masses represent the masses, not an individual. I think it's important. My hope is that this book is, just one of many that are, going to keep coming out. Korean Vegan just came out.
We have an interview with her on Taste.
Good.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, she's incredible. She's such a good talker. Anyway, I told her the other day that she's going to be like Oprah famous. Very
well,
soon.
thank you for the comment about Koreatown. I just want to say that. And also, I from the bits I've read from your manuscript and just what I've seen is this book is extremely unique in that it is your story. And I look forward to really the precise writing and the way that you really characterize not just the recipes, but your family story, and just the color that you write with. it's special when you can go into memoir in writing and not make it annoying. I'm just going to say that. There's been a lot of blowback. It's not an original thought. There's a lot of like, let's just get to the recipe.
Yeah.
But Eric, I really mean it. Like, your words are worth reading. And I just feel like you draw parallels with life around the world, around the country, within the Korean diaspora, Korean Americans. Your book is called Korean Americans. So I hope folks pick up your book. I really, when it comes out.
Thank you. Actually, like, memoir is a good thing to talk about because I think this is the book where I like really leaned into that, and I really felt, I think in my career I've like written different kinds of pieces, and maybe my bread and butter is memoir writing, but with this book I really kind of got to feel the power of that form, especially when you're talking about a cultural cuisine and just trying to make sure that you are telling a very specific story, because it's in the specifics that you find truths, I think, and ironically, it's in the individual specifics that you get universal truths. And so, even though I had a lot of anxiety with this book, and I want people to pick it up and be like, this is one Korean person's story, I also want Koreans to feel seen. And I think that's one beautiful thing that's happened with putting up recipes that happen to feature gochugaru or gochujang or kim or something like that. But I think the main thing has been seeing the reaction of other Koreans who feel seen. That feels really nice.
Yeah. Let's talk about Atlanta. I've had the pleasure of visiting Atlanta many times, and for Koreatown, got to go to Duluth, got to go to Buford Highway Farmers Market, Buford Highway, and you write a lot about Atlanta because that's where you're from. But I want to get your take on the community in Atlanta right now in 2021, the Korean American community. It's vibrant, and I feel like the national media doesn't cover Atlanta as a city where Korean culture is pervasive. So what's the scene right now?
Nice. Yeah. I always said that the Korean food in Atlanta is better than the Korean food in Manhattan. I can't say as much about Flushing or like Jersey, but the Korean food in Atlanta is so good. And I think this book, being in lockdown, but also just, moving back home to write it, and spending time in Atlanta and going to restaurants and, businesses and interviewing people, I kind of realized that city that I grew up in, I really took for granted. And I didn't realize what a vibrant Koreatown there was. And I took these things for granted. Like, of course, that whole shopping center is, taken over by Korean businesses. Of course, there are 3H Marts, of course. But then when you really look at the rest of the country, you realize, whoa, we were in a really beautiful, like, Korean place. So it's also a love letter to Atlanta. It's like, it's about my family and myself and, food, but it's also a love letter to Atlanta. The last chapter is called Korean Bakery, and I think that was it's like a good example to describe this, but I interviewed a woman who came over from Korea and started a chain of Korean bakeries.
Windmill?
Yeah, White Windmill. So,
White Windmill. I know that spot for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So growing up, it's on Buford Highway. It's amazing. But, growing up, I thought White Windmill was just everywhere. I thought it was like Perry Baguette, and I thought it was like, all the other Korean bakeries that are more national. But it was just this woman, and she grew up in a bakery as well, and she was a really impressive character, and I think it took me, like, growing up, like, she was always around. Like, she even, like, went to our church, I think, and stuff. It took growing up and kind of, like, looking at it from a reporter angle to realize what a great story that was. And so she kind of starts off that chapter, and it's a really wonderful bakery.
I can't wait to read your articulation of the Korean bakery experience, because I feel like that's it's very unique. There's European influence. There's the Franken pastries with hot dogs and all that. The mashing of culture.
Yeah.
What's one recipe from that chapter that we should look forward to?
There's a chewy black sesame rice cake that I really like, and it's my favorite Korean bakery good, which is that chewy black sesame roll. It's made with like mochigo flour and very chewy.
Oh man!
I said chewy like 4 times.
It's a great word. It really gets the sense of what you're doing here with this recipe.
Yeah, and that roll is just really moist. It's a weird word, but it's like very hydrated, and it's just like nothing else. So I really love that, and so I was able to somehow like turn it into a cake. And the cake is really nice because it's just like a one bowl thing. You whisk everything together. It's cool when it bakes because the sesame seeds are half ground and half whole, and as the cake bakes, some of the sesame seeds and the sugar, they kind of like rise to the top, and they bake in a single line on the top, kind of like almost like a black sesame brittle kind of thing. It was a total accident, and I was like, that looks really cool, and I did that on accident, and it tastes really good.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I have to tell the story. When we were reporting the book, Bill Addison was in Atlanta working there at the time. I think it was like 2013 or 14, and he took us to the spot that did andon chicken, andon jindak, right? And I'd never had that dish, never in New York. Agree with you about Manhattan, at least. I don't eat out in Manhattan, Koreatown as often as I'd like to. I love Her Name is Han, and there's some spots there, but Atlanta is the truth. Yeah. But are there dishes in Atlanta that you're seeing that you aren't really seeing in New York? Are there other specialties?
Yeah, I have a thing. I'd love it to be a call to the listeners, but another kind of truism or thing I realized in Atlanta was that this chicken wing that I took for granted was maybe a very Atlanta thing. So, like, I always thought Korean chicken wings were this very, like, dry, slightly moist, but, like, it's, like, mostly like a dry wing, very, very peppery, very Tabasco-y, hot saucy, very vinegary. It's very sharp and so delicious and like nothing else. It's kind of like a buffalo wing, but a little more, like, concentrated and more peppery. But I was talking to my dad, and he's kind of like friends with one of the guys who started one of the first restaurants in Atlanta. And because of the history, it's so new. I started to wonder if maybe this is a theory, but I started to wonder if maybe it was like the Mexican immigrant population and the Korean immigrant population that like kind of came together in restaurants, and they created this wing, and it was very popular in Buford Highway, and it's kind of like the hot wing you might find at like Atlanta Korean hot wing restaurants. And I think it might be very particular to Atlanta. It's like you can get fried chicken up here, but it's always going to be like more Korean, like Korea style, with like the yangnyeom seasoning, or just plain, or whatever they have now. But so yeah, this is like a very
that's cool. I like
Atlanta
that. I think diving
wing.
in those kind of regional like dishes and the way that you're articulating is why I look forward to reading your book and your work at the Times. And I want to talk a little more Times, because I saw this tweet that kind of lifted the curtain a bit at the New York Times food desk. I can't remember who tweeted it, but I believe it was to you. Are you a Dukes or QP person? or no, let me get it straight. Are you Dukes or QP Hive? So, Eric, are you Dukes or QP Hive?
I'm neither, actually. So, yeah, it's kind of like, we can talk about salt maybe, or maybe we shouldn't. But my kind of secret is that I love Hellmann's, and I've always been a Hellmann's guy, and I think the flavor fits my palate. I like that it's kind of softer and gentler, and it's also what I grew up with. And QP is really good, but it's a little strong for me.
It's strong, and you've taken zero money from Hellmann's, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Okay,
exactly.
Figured so. Yeah, I agree. Hellmann's is dope, and it definitely has. I love the way you just said soft, because it is. It's like a softer MSG is through, like, driving its way through QP, and then Dukes. What do you think about Dukes? What's your take on it?
It's like tartar, and it's more flavorful, but
yeah,
it is a thing where it's only the Dukes people who are, have their fists up and they're just like, Dukes is the best. But you don't see any Hellmann's people being like, Hellmann's is the best mayonnaise. So it's a really funny kind of behavioral thing I've noticed, and I think that happens when it's a regional thing and you're trying to like claim it as your own. And
yeah,
it makes sense. Yeah,
I mean, talking about mayonnaise is just fun. Great names. It's great on everything, I believe, fully, though ranch is probably my favorite condiment of that ilk. Yeah. What are you looking forward to this fall for cookbooks? I wanted to ask you because, these books that are coming out right now are really special, selection of books, because these are quarantine books. These are books that are written during the quarantine, as your book was written during the quarantine. So I feel it's important to call that out in talking about the fall season, the spring season of next year. Like, these books are written under tremendous circumstances. So just get that out of the way first. But what are you looking forward to?
When it comes to fall, one thing I've really gained an interest in over the pandemic and over the course of writing this book was baking. So I'm really looking at Valerie Lamas's like new book. It's wonderful, and for obvious reasons. And Jesse Sheshik, who, just full disclosure, is a friend, he wrote cookies, and I think I kind of saw like the behind the scenes of that whole process, and there's just so much heart in Jesse's book, and it's it's also innovative. Like if you've ever had his food, it's just he like cooks really well. So the cookies I'm excited to try some of them myself because they sound really delicious.
Yeah, they're really inventive
yeah.
and straight up. Valerie and Jesse are booked for the show. So I don't know
good.
when this is coming out.
Nice.
They may have appeared before in the feed, they may appear after, but those are two.
Love them both, yeah. As people, too. They're just great people.
Great folks. We ask everyone on the Taste podcast, what is your dream cookbook or food book? If you were given unlimited time, budget, and really all the space you needed to write, what would it be, Eric?
I thought about this, and the real answer is something that, full disclosure, I don't want to talk about because I think I'm going to pitch it soon. But I will say one book that I really would like to do is, just 100 dinner recipes. That sounds, I would have to come up with an angle that, is new and feels right for me. But I think I want to explain that it's because, I thought this book was really wonderful to produce for obvious reasons. I was cooking with my mom for a year. So rewarding learning about your heritage and your past and your own hometown. A lot of good things, but there were parameters, right? It had to be Korean and American. So there were parameters, and there was a lot of invention that came from that. But I really just want the freedom to develop a book that's in the general cooking category. Not to take away from Korean American, I'm so proud of it, and it's a great intro. But I just want to be able to write about what I want, and I think it almost feels political to want to write just a regular dinner book like every other white writer out there. So, yeah.
Great answer, and I really encourage you to continue writing. From the road, from the missed deadline, and just writing with the spirit that creates these just wonderful recipes, but also stories. Eric,
thanks for the permission.
No, I just can't wait to watch your career and just all the books you're going to write.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. This is I've been a Taste fan for a very long time. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for joining, Eric. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Anna, we wanted to close our first show back with a little, we'll call it a FAQ, to answer some of the questions about a return to podcasting after over 2 years off the air. So Anna, tell me, what is up with this cookbook you've been writing? I want to hear about that first.
I am writing a book all about canned fish. So my apartment right now is pretty much filled to the brim with canned fish. Small New York apartment. And probably 200 cans of fish.
Total prepper style. I love it.
Yeah, I'm ready for anything. Blizzards, come at me.
Why land on canned fish? I love this idea. Is it something, I know you'd written about it in Taste, but what landed on, how did you land on that?
I mean, tinned seafood in general connects so many different cultures and cuisines together, and it's such a special thing to collect, to bring home as a souvenir from a trip, to give to people. Yeah. And there are so many ways to enjoy it straight out of the can or by cooking it into recipes.
So cool. I can't wait for it to come. When's it coming out?
It's coming out in spring 2023. Stay posted.
In the future. Awesome.
What about you? You're also working on a book.
I know, right, we're talking about our book projects here. No, we've been busy with working on Taste, and we'll get into that later. But yeah, I have a book coming out in February called Food IQ. I wrote it with my buddy Dan Holzman, who has been on the podcast many times. And it is out in early February or mid-February. So it answers 100 burning food questions through recipes, anecdote, and bullshitting. No, really, there's no bullshitting. We just kind of talk about it as we do.
It's a great book. There is some canned fish in your book, too.
Shouts. Yeah, definitely some canned fish in there. But enough about us. Let's talk about the podcast because we're bringing it back. So for you, Anna, why bring it back? What was your plan when bringing it back?
Well, there's so much that you can learn about a person and their attitude towards cooking from just sitting down and having a conversation with them. You get to hear some of the uglier, nitty-gritty parts about writing a cookbook or opening a restaurant, some of the little details you wouldn't hear otherwise. But you also just get to hear amazing stories from people, like when we had Dory Greenspan on the podcast, and she talked about in like 1993 working for the Food Network and how scrappy and DIY it all was.
Yeah, I love that episode. It really takes you back to a time when food media is much different. And we often do focus on the food media and the writing of about food and cookbook authorship. We had Ruth Reuschel on. We had Pete Wells. We had Robert Sietsema and Bill Addison, restaurant critics. So we'll continue that tradition of interviewing writers we really respect and authors, but also emerging talent in food. I feel like that's something we've always done in the Pages of Taste. But hopefully we'll speak with young, hungry talent and hear about their big ideas.
I gotta ask, I mean, I want to ask this question to listeners too, but who are some of your dream guests, Matt? Like, just thinking big.
Ooh, it's a good one. I thought about this. I know, like, looking over across the pond, I love Nigella Lawson. Like, I have to talk to Nigella Lawson at some point. I think she's so generous with her time. She's so classy and has, first and foremost, a really cool sense about home cooking and the way she develops recipes. I also want to talk to Ruby Tando, who has written a few articles for Taste, and she's one of the leading lights in food writing over there in England. And lastly, I think Gary Steingart, a novelist who I've kind of known through email over the years. I think he might be stopping by at some point. So I look forward to that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
For me, it's all about, I'm going to say like childhood heroes. Like, I would love to sit down and talk to Rachel Ray. I've been watching her show forever. Martha Stewart definitely would be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, we have some really good guests already in the can, as they say. Already in the tin. The tinned fish. No, we have some tinned fish in the can. We talked to Priya Krishna. We talked to Valerie Lomas. We have maybe Lucas Sin will stop by. We have been making lots of plans, and we hope to really populate the feed with cool interviews, big and small names, folks you may know, folks you may not know. And really, podcasting has just changed so much since the 2 years of us signing off. And we know many of you may be new to the podcast. So welcome and enjoy the ride.
The Taste Podcast is hosted by Matt Rodbard and me, Anna Hezel. The show is produced by Pat Stango and edited by Clayton Gumbert. Our theme music is by Steve Rydell. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter. Thanks for listening.